You know that feeling when you've been wrestling with a bike that leaks more oil than it burns, and suddenly something comes along that just works? That was 1978 in a nutshell. Suzuki rolled out this shaft-drive cruiser that had British riders, poor sods covered in Triumph grease, scratching their heads so hard you'd think they'd found a unicorn. The GS1000C. Smooth as a jazz record, refined in ways that shouldn't have been possible for a Japanese company still finding its footing in the big board game. And now, 48 years later, they've done the unthinkable. They brought it back. Not some half-baked tribute with a sticker kit, not a special edition that's really just a paint job at a markup. Nope, Suzuki went all in. A full ground-up revival that keeps everything that made the original magical while finally dragging it kicking and screaming into the modern era. And honestly, by the time we're done here, you're going to realize this might be Suzuki's most important cruiser in decades. There's a twist at the end too, one that'll make you side-eye every leaked motorcycle photo you ever see again. Stick with me. So, context. Because you can't really get why this matters unless you understand where it all started. The original GS1000 dropped in '78 as Suzuki's first real leader-class four-stroke. Built on the bones of the GS750, which was already a solid platform, it packed an air-cooled inline-four DOHC engine that churned out about 87 horsepower. Massive for the time. Like genuinely face-melting stuff. The C variant was special though. It introduced shaft drive to the lineup. No more greasy chains, no more constant fiddling with tensioners, just twist and go. Smooth as butter. That bike won at Daytona its debut year. It wasn't just respected, people were genuinely afraid of it. Then, like so many great machines from that era, it got pushed aside as Suzuki pivoted to the GSXR line and those aggressive sport bikes that owned the 80s and 90s. Why bring it back now though? Look around. Suzuki's been on this heritage kick lately. I don't mean that as some marketing buzzword. It's a legit strategy. The GSX-8ST and GSX-8STT showed there's real hunger for retro-styled bikes that don't make you sacrifice modern reliability. The Katana came back and actually held its own. So now Suzuki's digging deeper into the archives. Betting riders want something with actual lineage, not just a paint scheme that looks old but has zero soul. Alright, let's get into the guts of this thing. Because Suzuki didn't just slap retro bodywork onto a modern chassis and call it a day. That would have been lazy. They actually gave a damn. The new GS1000C runs a liquid-cooled inline-four mill, 999 cc's give or take, tuned specifically for that smooth, linear torque delivery the original was famous for. They weren't chasing peak horsepower numbers here. We're talking somewhere around 110 ponies, which sounds almost modest by today's standards, until you realize that's not the point. This isn't trying to be a GSXR. It's not hunting quarter-mile times. It's built for the rider who wants to roll on the throttle on a back road and feel that surge, not bounce off a red line like a maniac. And yes, shaft drive is back. Suzuki kept that front and center because it's basically the DNA of what made the C special in the first place. No chain maintenance, no lubing your driveline every other ride, just clean, low-fuss power getting to the rear wheel. Simple. Quick question, and I want you to actually think about this for a second. Would you rather have 15 more horsepower or never touch a chain again for as long as you own the bike? Drop your answer in the comments, because I promise you this exact debate was happening inside Suzuki's engineering team. The fact that they stuck with shaft drive tells you everything about who this bike is really for. Chassis-wise, this is where modern engineering really flexes. The frame is a redesigned steel double cradle, keeps that classic silhouette intact with rigidity numbers that would have made the 1978 frame engineers weep with envy. Suspension comes from fully adjustable components front and rear, a massive leap from the basic setup the original rolled on. Braking? Dual front discs, single rear disc, paired with modern ABS that honestly should be standard on every bike in this price range. No excuses. Weight's interesting too. Suzuki's targeting around 480 pounds wet, manageable without feeling like a featherweight, because cruiser riders actually want that planted, substantial feel. Nobody's trying to flick this thing around like a 250. Here's a pattern interrupt for you. Have you ever noticed how every retro bike review eventually drops the line, "It rides better than it looks like it should"? I'm not going to do that to you, because this bike doesn't just ride well for a retro, it rides well, period. The fueling's crisp, the throttle response is linear, and Suzuki tuned the exhaust to actually echo that deep, offbeat four-cylinder rumble the original was known for, just without rattling your fillings loose at highway speeds. Small mercies. Styling? Honestly, this is where Suzuki could have totally dropped the ball, and they didn't. The tank shape mirrors the original almost exactly. That long, slightly tapered profile with the indented knee pockets. The side covers carry the same script-style badging. Even the dual exhaust pipes echo that classic stacked silhouette, just updated with modern catalytic internals hidden inside. Launch colorways? A deep midnight blue that's a direct nod to the 1978 original, and a burgundy option that's basically a love letter to anyone who owned one of these back in the day. You know who you are. Pricing. Because if you're actually considering buying one, this matters. Suzuki's positioning the new GS1000C at around $10,999. That puts it in direct conversation with the Katana and GSX-8ST lineup, but gives buyers way more emotional pull. For comparison, that's roughly what you'd pay for a clean, used original GS1000C from a private seller anyway. Except this one comes with a warranty and doesn't leak oil all over your garage floor. Progress, right? Before we get to how this thing actually rides, I need you to remember something I said earlier about leaked photos. Keep that in the back of your mind. We're coming back to it. So, how's the ride? Early test sessions describe the ergonomics as upright and neutral, not aggressive like a sport bike, not stretched out like a full cruiser. It sits right in that sweet spot where you can comfortably ride for hours without your wrists or lower back filing an official complaint. Seat height is around 31 inches, approachable for a wider range of riders than you'd expect from a leader-class machine. On twisty roads, the chassis reportedly holds its composure far better than the styling suggests it should. Which, again, I promised I wouldn't say, but here we are because it's genuinely true. The shaft drive doesn't introduce the driveline lash you might expect from older systems. Suzuki clearly spent serious engineering hours refining that connection point between the transmission and rear wheel. It shows. Now let's address the elephant in the room. If you're a longtime Suzuki fan, you already know the GS1000C carries serious weight in the cruiser and standard community. This isn't a brand slapping a famous name on a generic platform to chase nostalgia dollars. At least, that's the story being told. And that's exactly where I need to pull back the curtain. Here's the twist. Everything you just heard, the specs, the pricing, the colorways, the shaft drive details, none of it is an official Suzuki announcement. There is no real 2026 Suzuki GS1000C. What you just watched is a fully realized concept build based on real historical research into the original bike, current Suzuki design language, and genuine market pricing data. Presented exactly the way it would look if Suzuki actually greenlit this project tomorrow. Suzuki's actual confirmed 2026 lineup, it includes the GSX-1000 40th Anniversary Editions, the returning Hayabusa, and the GSX-1000 GX Plus. No GS1000C anywhere on that list, official or otherwise. So why build this video at all? Because sometimes the most interesting motorcycle content isn't about what exists, it's about what should. And if Suzuki's product team happens to be watching this, and I know some of them are, the comment section's wide open. Tell them exactly what you think.